A very good evening and welcome to this week's final episode of On the Record. My name is Vuyo Mvogo. Well, on the show tonight, has the EFF crossed the line? EFF media head Mbuyiseni Ndlozi and SANEF's Adrian Basson debate. But first, a story that didn't grab screaming headlines, but which, to those behind the idea, say is something we should all be concerned about. Well, a group of Afrikaans-speaking activists have declared war on traditionally Afrikaans universities and are taking them to the Constitutional Court. Now, parallel to that, they are establishing an Afrikaans university. Is there more to this than meets the eye? Joining us from our Pretoria studio is one of the people in the know about all of this, and that's Ian Cameron of AfriForum. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Well, and here in the studio, I do have Professor Shadrack Guto, who is a constitutional expert. Let me start with you, Ian, if I may. What is it that you are taking to the Constitutional Court? To what end?
Well, I just need to make a correction. We're not going to the Constitutional Court yet. I think it's something that we have spoken about. But firstly, we would need to follow the correct procedures and go ahead then. But we have launched a 5-point plan today in Pretoria where we speak about the language policies of all the universities throughout South Africa and what we can do to make sure that we conserve Afrikaans at all of these different universities and ensure that all students have access to mother tongue education.
But what does that mean in very practical and real terms? I mean,
well, it's quite simple.
Yes.
If I can explain, it's quite simple. In the last few months, especially since the end of 2015, we've seen an increase in specifically the assault or the attack on Afrikaans as mother tongue education, or as a mother tongue education medium rather, especially at universities such as Stellenbosch, University of Pretoria, Northwest University's Potchefstroom campus. And you know what we are saying is that everyone should have access. This isn't about simply saying that we need to conserve Afrikaans, but also that everyone should enjoy access to mother tongue education. And why do we hear statements from groups like the EFF saying that Afrikaans will be removed because English classes aren't of the right standard? Why are we removing one at the cost of another? Why aren't we developing all the different languages to ensure that everyone has the correct access and the same quality to mother tongue education? And it is possible. You know, later on in the program, I think I will quote from a statement from the UN just last year, where they amplified or made sure that everyone knew exactly why it is so important to make sure that we conserve mother tongue education. So
what do you specifically want a Stellenbosch or the Northwest University, or should I say the Potchefstroom campus of that university, Pretoria University? What do you want those universities to do?
We would like them to come to the party and keep their promises. You know, just last week we heard Wim de Villiers, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Stellenbosch, saying that Afrikaans has a place at Stellenbosch, but just the day after that, 2 of the faculties admitted to have changed their language policy without following the procedure or the correct steps according to the university's whole language policy, and that to us is just not the right way of doing things. And on top of that, it's a constitutional right to receive education in your mother tongue, and for us, it's not only unconstitutional the way that they're acting, but they are also breaking their own rules. And therefore, we are saying, but let's create space for all the different groups to be able to have mother tongue education. We can even look at it demographically. It's a very small percentage of universities in South Africa that present Afrikaans classes, and there's nothing wrong with that. Why is that being threatened when there are so many other options right across the country where all the universities presented in English? And I think it's time that we develop other languages as well.
Professor Guto, do they have a case?
I think that in terms of pushing the boundaries of constitutionalism, they do have a right to do that. However, do they have a chance of winning such a case? I doubt it. I doubt it because we have really 11 official languages in the country, and I think that's a minimal number that the Constitution recognizes. We do have other languages which are, like sign languages. We have languages which are used in religious and spiritual ways and so on. And those are recognized in Section 6 of the Constitution. Are we going to divide the country in a way that universities are then categorized as belonging to any of those 11 plus others? And if we do so, are we trying to build a nation? Or are we trying to keep separation, which was called apartheid, within the new South Africa, using the Constitution really to maintain what people fought to remove and to liberate from? So I don't think that this is a matter that is winnable in a constitutional...
Chapter 2 of the Bill of Rights, Section 29, states that everyone has the right to receive education in their official language or languages of their choice in public educational institutions where that education is reasonably practicable.
Now, the point there is reasonably practicable. Is it practicable to be able to have University of Pretoria, for example, where the majority of the people around speak Setswana or whatever language they speak?
Well, without preempting him, what if he says that, look, you've had that before, why kill it? You had that at Stellenbosch, you had that at the University of Pretoria, you had that at Potchefstroom.
Do we want to maintain the past? No. The liberation as a whole was a question of changing from colonialism, apartheid, to building a new South Africa, which is inclusive. The question is, if you use those languages in those universities, are you really trying to build a nation? And from that point of view, you do have University of Northwest at the moment. It's a merger of the old university that you had in the Potchefstroom and you had in, the Setswana-speaking people had their own university. They merged. Do you want to separate them now? Do you want to do the same with the University of KwaZulu-Natal, where you had Westville, of Indians and Asians, and then you had University of Natal for English-speaking people? And so do you want to recreate that? Where do we go from it? So I think that this is horrendous thinking, to think that we can go back to where we came from rather than trying to build a new South Africa.
Ian?
It's actually quite easy to respond to. Professor, I think you're actually the one contradicting the Constitution at the moment. The Constitution creates space for all the different cultures in the country to be represented. And if we don't celebrate each other's beautiful languages and we don't celebrate the cultural diversity in South Africa, then we will not be representing what the Constitution says. So, in fact, through making mother tongue education a priority across the board, and I'm not talking about religious languages or sign language, we are talking about the 11 official languages of South Africa. Through making that a priority, we will be emphasizing our constitutional right and to celebrate our cultural differences, our cultural diversity in South Africa. So this would be a step to forget the past. No one would be excluded. We would find a way to include all the cultural groups and also include all the different language groups. And just to add to that, it's got nothing to do with race or separation in many areas in the country, and you can go speak to the students yourself. A lot of the students who speak only Afrikaans as their mother tongue aren't white students, so it's got nothing to do with a racial thing. And definitely not only with a cultural thing. This is simply to say that we need to develop the languages in which we think, we pray, and we do everything we do throughout our days in this country.
You don't think that your focus on Afrikaans actually contradicts everything that you are saying? In other words, what would have happened, what would take away from your cause if you were to say we are fighting for a recognition of all languages and not just Afrikaans, and not talk about even setting up a university that will teach in Afrikaans? Don't you think that's how you should approach it rather?
Vuyo, it's a very good thing that you're saying there. And if you go and read our statements of the past year or longer, we do say that all the different languages should be developed.
By the way,
are a mostly a Afrikaans group, and therefore, of course, we will encourage it. But we will support other cultural groups as well in their fight to have mother tongue education. So it's not one or the other. We are saying we are building up and we are proud of our culture. But in the same way, we need to create room in which we can respect other cultures and help them to develop their mother tongue language in education.
Prof?
I think here we are dealing with two paradigms of thinking around constitution and constitutionalism, that I do accept the desire to be able to say the Constitution recognizes 11 official languages. I've said there are more, and they are adding. Right now, we are dealing with questions of Mandarin coming in. We are dealing with, even if because of the economic power of China, but we are also dealing with areas in South Africa where Kiswahili, people from Eastern Africa are speaking. If you go to Sunnyside in Pretoria and so on, very soon they will say the Constitution was written way back, and now we need to improve on this. So we can't keep on really reproducing divisions. The question then is, how do we have a language that builds a nation, but within that we recognize all the other languages and they are taught? In other words, students can choose to write their essays, whatever they want to write, and so on, but in their languages of choice.
But Prof, yeah, are we not reaping what we've sown? In other words, have we not, 21 years down the line, 21 years into this democracy, have we delivered on this particular, on this part or sphere of our lives?
We haven't. I think.
But isn't that the problem? And perhaps less that Ian and those he is, and like-minded people are just pursuing what they believe they should pursue. In other words, they are not necessarily wrong.
They have a right to pursue it, but in pursuing it, if their thinking was to be implemented, what are the implications?
But whose
for
job?
Building a new South Africa.
But then whose
That's
job
the issue.
is it to strike that balance?
All
is
of
it,
us.
Is it him?
I don't blame him. I don't blame him. I don't blame the Afrikaner group
who should
for
we
pushing
blame, or who
their
should
boundaries.
take responsibility?
And it is the responsibility of leadership in the country. What we lack is really leadership that begins to understand the complexity of the society, the plurality of the society we are dealing with, and to be able to say, under these circumstances, what do we do? We should have the official language, but at the same time give room for people who want to pursue their writing and presenting whatever they're learning about in their languages. And we have a way in which we shall be able to mark them, to be able to assess them, and so on. So there is a language that tries to common to everybody, but at the same time give room for people who want to extend. We don't want to destroy languages. Mind you, that one of the problems that we have had in Africa is under colonialism, the destruction of African indigenous languages. It is not just Afrikaans. And from that point of view, yes, I believe that we should have a strategy that makes it not simplistic way of saying it is English, finished. No. It is English, but in other aspects, we allow other languages also to be used.
Okay, Prof. Ian, we're going to take a quick ad break. This debate continues after.
We live in a digital era, and the number of Africans with mobile phones is rapidly increasing.
Twitter use is predominantly being done on smartphones. This is a very African phenomenon.
Here, there are constantly new innovative ways to make the internet more affordable. With that, we're seeing protests against governments proposing methods to limit access. On Network, we give you information about all of this. We also have new computers, games, and robots.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
The big news is Newsroom.
We also stream live on YouTube.
Whether you're at home, at the office, or at the gym, wherever you are, Newsroom is right there with you. Bringing you all the latest news, updates, sports, weather, and everything in between. Get all the latest news you need on the go via live streaming on our YouTube channel. That's Newsroom, weekdays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Record, and if you just joined us, we are talking about a demand that is being made by groupings that include AfriForum that want Africans to be recognized and to be taught in South African, or at least some South African universities. Now, Ian, if I may come back to you. Now, parallel to this, you guys are talking about establishing a university that will teach in Afrikaans. Can you give us some detail on that?
Yeah, definitely. The university is already functioning. It's called Academia. It is growing by the year. It's now almost 3 years old, and every few months we are adding another module to it. So we're very proud of it, and I think it's the one place where Afrikaans is not under threat at the moment. As we heard previously, and we can discuss it later, Afrikaans is under threat at many of the universities, and we need to create a safe space to conserve that. And I would advise the same thing to other cultural groups.
Who's funding it?
It comes from the Solidarity Movement specifically. It's made up of a whole lot of members who pay membership fees to the movement every month, and through this we can start driving these kinds of projects, like building the university, like having youth initiatives and so forth, and especially focusing once again on the development and the conservation of mother tongue education.
Are there people who are being taught there already?
Yes, there are. There are several students being taught there. We've got 7 places across the country where people can receive classes like we are now, the same kind of technology over a camera. They can be in different locations around South Africa, but receive classes over television.
What courses or subjects are being taught?
There are different courses. Some are business administration. There are some parts of accounting specifically. And there are also bridging courses like mathematics and so forth to develop for people to be able to start studying different degrees in the future.
Are you registered? Are you recognized by the relevant authorities?
Yes. Yes, definitely. No, it's registered with government and everything, and we actually just opened our new campus as well. So it's doing very well, and it's growing by the day.
Prof? I mean, they have a right to do that.
There's a serious contradiction.
The question is, what happens to the millions of South Africans who can't do that?
I think that these people with economic power in society able to use their economic power to advance their interests. Not all groups in society, linguistic groups, have that power. And one would want to really check who registered them and who recognized their qualifications. Are they recognized qualifications, so that at the end of the exit, when they get certificate, those certificates are actually recognized. That needs to be looked into. I will not accept as given what he is saying, that yes, these are already recognized, because the students going through those processes may find themselves in the end with useless certificates that are not really recognized. But as we go forward, I think it is important. I belong to a group based in Pretoria. You know, it is called Lembede, Tambo, and Pishi chambers, where we want to be able to develop lawyers in South Africa, legal practitioners, lawyers, judges, and so on, to be able to use local languages when they are dealing with legal matters, because there's a lot of problems in our courts when English is used, even when the judge, the legal representatives, and so on are actually speaking the language of the litigants who are in court. So we are promoting that also. So the question of development of African languages in areas of law, science, technology, and is important. And that includes Africans. They can do that. How do you do it is the question. And I think it is the way in which they are approaching it, really trying to use their economic power and so on, which is very dangerous and ought to be challenged before those students going through that university find themselves in limbo at the end.
Ian, to someone who says they've heard what you're saying and they probably agree with you on a number of issues. However, when you use language like you know, Afrikaans is under threat, when you say you are looking for, or you already have a safe spaces within which to speak Afrikaans and to be taught in Afrikaans, that's something akin to creating this sort of lager mentality and creating your own little homeland, so to speak. That perhaps the best way that you guys should approach this is to actually join forces with other South Africans and actually fight for a recognition of all instead of just Afrikaans, or elevating Afrikaans above other languages. And in that way, you will be making quite a strong statement about your South Africanness and about the fact that as you were saying earlier, you actually care and you want other languages to be elevated.
Yeah, it's a good point that you make there, although I don't completely agree with you on everything. You know, if we go look at Afrikaans specifically across South Africa, especially in the last few months, University of Stellenbosch, Pretoria, University of Northwest, the Free State, Elsenburg Agricultural College, and the list goes on, CPUT in the Western Cape as well. Every single time a group like Fees Must Fall or Reform PIK or Uprising start to protest, the second topic on the memorandum is to remove Afrikaans. Why don't we see Prof, you, for example, coming to fight that fight? And with that, I would like to challenge you and ask, is your course registered with the department? Because ours is, and we followed the right procedure. On top of that, it is only Afrikaans that is always a target. Why is it that a minority group only has a certain amount of rights according to certain political organizations? Why is it that it seems that we only deserve a small amount of human rights just because we are a minority? If you go look throughout the whole of South Africa, Afrikaans is always a target. And I would like to quote something from the UN report that came out a few years ago and from the press statement from last year.
Before you do that, Ian, before you do that, can I ask you? I mean, when you use language like minority groups, you know, you are excluding yourself. You're suggesting that, you know, you are not really fully South African, that you are a small group that belongs in some corner somewhere.
Not at all.
That should have rights, you know,
but if you
accorded to you, just you.
If you allow
Isn't
me,
that the problem?
If you allow me to intervene before he does.
It's definitely not the case. If I can just respond to that, the point is this: that if you we need to have the same discussion with groups like the EFF, like Blacks First, Land First, that always say that Afrikaans people are a minority, whites are a minority, and they need to leave the country. We hear these kinds of utterances, but we don't hear the same questions being asked to them. They are the ones polarizing people, where we are the ones saying, let's rather find a way to improve mother tongue education across the board. Okay. That is truly South African. That is the principle where we built our constitution on, and that is the way we need to go forward in this country to make sure we've got respect and honor between different cultural groups, race groups, and languages throughout the whole republic.
Okay, let's hear what Professor said.
Really, I wanted to intervene there on the question of minorityism. Using the language of minorityism. Every ethnic group in South Africa, every linguistic group in South Africa is a minority. And I don't think there's any majority, any linguistic group that is a majority in South Africa. And that, whether you talk about the larger groups like the Zulu-speaking people and so on and so forth, they are a minority as a group. And Africans speaking, languages, people, white or colored or black and so on, are a minority. Whether you're talking of the vendor people, anybody is a minority in the country. There's no majority people in the country. So we need to have a paradigm of thinking, of being able to understand that out of minorities you create a nation. How do you create it? What are the elements you need to put in it that combines everybody and yet allow autonomy of the various components of the whole? That is the challenge.
Do you accept that challenge, Ian?
I think the Prof is contradicting himself. Earlier he said that it's going to create separation, and now suddenly we need to develop it again. My point is this: we need to find a way to develop mother tongue education across the board for all cultural groups. We are specifically fighting for Afrikaans, but we will support any other group that does it, and that is the way to celebrate the beautiful cultural diversity of South Africa.
Thank you very much, Prof. Last word?
Just to say that the idea of minority groups, yes, they are minority. There's international law protecting minorities and so on. But I think in order to build a nation, you cannot build it on the basis of each group calling itself a minority and pushing its own agenda. Then you don't build a nation. And I believe if we want to build a new South Africa, we want to build a multicultural, multilingual, multiracial society. And we can't build it on the basis of each pulling in opposite directions for their own interests.
Professor Shadrack Goodshaw, Ian Cameron, thank you to both of you for coming and discussing this. We hope this conversation will continue way beyond this studio. Well, that's where we're going to leave this particular discussion. Up next, it's the EFF versus the media, following comments that were made today by the EFF's president, Julius Malema. That's after this short break.
In Africa, technology has created many new ways of doing things.
ICT is an increasingly important part of everybody's life.
It's being used in education, for social media, and now for farming too.
The best thing about internet for a farmer that we get to share information.
On Network, we give you all the important African technology and social media news. That's Network with me, Siphumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time, only on SABC News.
As stories are broken around the world, SABC makes sure you do not miss out. As the stories unfold throughout the day, News at 8 updates all newsworthy stories worldwide. Globally, we are there. Locally, we leave no story untold. Make a date with News at 8 every Saturday and Sunday on SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Will kill. Is that bite ready? Good evening. Welcome back to the second part of our program, where we will be discussing comments made by EFF President Julius Malema earlier today at a media conference. Let's take a listen. Okay, there seems to be a problem with that clip. Well, maybe you can summarize it for us since you were there.
Thanks very much, firstly, for having us, Vuyo. We have declared that the Gupta media, ANN7 and the New Age, are no longer welcome in EFF events. And this is because, to us, they are not media. They are the communications department of the Gupta family masquerading as independent journalism. They are what NESPAS used to be under apartheid. And any association with them is a legitimization of the Guptas, a normalization, a normal relationship with them. We can't allow that. And as a result, we are conscious that that particular position will put the workers that work for these institutions, not just in the media houses, but that are owned by the Guptas in general, in the crossfire. We're conscious of that. And the Commander-in-Chief said, these are our brothers and sisters. Some of them are even EFF members.
Really?
But they must, in as far as they come in the name of the Gupta-owned media, they are not welcome in our events.
What did you make of that, Adrian?
The South African National Editors Forum is quite disappointed by that statement today by Mr. Malema. We've always experienced the EFF as a very open and welcoming party to journalists, open for debate, open on documents and reading and debating points of argument. I think to ban any journalist from any gathering is something that we don't support. We think it's wrong. We think it's against the spirit of media freedom and media expression. We think that there's a number of ways that the EFF can take up the issues with the Gupta family and even those media companies without having to ban these journalists from press conferences, rallies, etc. For example, set up meetings with the editor of the New Age, meet the bosses of ANN7, insist on rights of reply in the newspaper, take them to the Ombudsman, even sue them in the High Court.
It's a contested space.
Yes, it is a contested space, and I just think it's really not the way we want to go. It's not the EFF I came to know. You know, the EFF is a robust party that invites debate and it likes challenge of ideas. What we heard today is not that. It's a party that says, listen, because you're linked to a certain media owner, we're not going to allow you into our gatherings, which raises the question, what next? You know, which next media house will be banned from EFF rallies? So we are actually calling, and we will, as SANEF, engage the EFF leadership on this matter to put our views forward and explain why we think it's the wrong move.
Unban ANN7, hashtag.
No, the problem is that his entire argument is based on the premise that he's not engaging. You're supposed to engage us on our beginning premise. We don't think that they're media. We don't think that ANN7 and the New Age are media. We think that they're masquerading. So you must put yourself under apartheid and say what would have been, as at the editors forum, your moral obligation in relation to Naspers, that you knew already under apartheid of the association to an illegitimate government. And so that's the beginning point of departure. We don't think that they are media. Now, the workers who work there, they come to our press conferences not as journalists who are working for themselves. They come as representatives of the media houses of the Gupta family. And they are not banned as individual journalists. They are banned in as far as they come in the name of ANN7 and the New Age.
But I've heard people,
and by the way,
I've heard people saying such things about the SABC. That we are his master's voice, we represent...
But you are not owned by the ANC. The ANC does not have an ownership. In fact, in Parliament, we've put an argument. We're going to be fighting fiercely against some of the amendments to remove Parliament from its roles of appointing the board of the SABC. It's a contested terrain. It's a contested space. We are deconstructing. We're not going to be taken advantage of. We're not going to allow a family that has abused the generosity of the South African people. They are engaged in a whole lot of illegitimate things. There are no consequences to them. So the point of departure that the editors must engage us with is that we are saying we don't think that we think they are masquerading in the same form that Naspers used to masquerade for an illegitimate government. To that extent, we are not banning journalists, qua journalists. We are banning people who come in the name of the Gupta family, who come in the name of New Age. And by the way, we have the freedom of association. We can choose who we associate with. We're not saying they must not write about us. We're not saying that they must not cover, but they must not come to our events. As a concrete step to disrupt the corrupt activities of the Gupta family.
Well, I don't know about, who are these journalists that Ms. Ndlozi is talking about, because the journalists I know work at the New Age. I think you were also the editor there. I mean, it's real journalists. It's people who we know. It's people that used to work on other titles. Those people who attended your press conference there today, they were not there, in my view, to collect intelligence for the Gupta family. They were there to report on a story. They reported on it in a way that obviously doesn't make you happy. And then there's channels to address that in appropriate forums, like the press ombudsman, like a High Court application, like a meeting with the editor. As SANEF, we are disappointed in this ban, because we really don't believe that the guys you are punishing here, the journalists who want to inform their readership, we really believe that they are working for a legitimate newspaper or TV station, which you might not think. You are punishing them. You are punishing and preventing them from doing their job, from reporting the news.
Adrian, the sacrosancy that you attribute to journalists is false. They are waged workers. It's like anybody when we say we are going to march against ABSA and occupy the ABSA branches, and they say, but what about the workers who work there? Aren't you endangering their lives, and so on and so forth? There are workers like that. So the sacrosancy that you occupy, they could write in their blogs, they can come to EFF press conferences, but not in the name of the Gupta. So what you are avoiding is to discuss with me, is to take a moral position as the editors forum about Gupta family and the ownership of media houses. Those are not media houses. In our deconstruction, in our analysis, that is a masquerade. They are a communications department of the Gupta family. By the way, you know, the circulation, for instance, of the New Age, their numbers are not even audited by ABC. They are supported, 90% of their budget is supported through government adverts. There's a lot of corruption where politicians work with the Guptas, run a New Age publication to make money on the other side. We're taking a moral position, and we're saying to you, engage us on that. Don't tell us about the workers. Of course, in all types of engagement in the revolution, that's why we said we are conscious. They must not come, we are aware. We love them, they are our brothers. They'll be caught in the crossfire. It's not about them. That is a statement to say we are conscious of the fact that and we are saying to them it's not about them. It's about the wage, where they get the money to come to the EFF in the first place. There'll be decisions, for instance, and it's not because they wrote a certain bad story. We did not say that. It's not because they wrote badly about the EFF, about the commander. No, it's not about any story that they've ever written. It's about who owns them, who pays their wages. We are refusing to be part of a legitimacy of a communications house of a Gupta family that is bringing this country into disrepute every day, and there are no consequences to them. That's a moral obligation as the editors that you must take. Engage us on that.
You see, I think, Vuyo, that it's contradictory on the one hand to say that we love the journalists who work for the New Age, on the other hand that they are not welcome, and that in fact we can't guarantee their safety and their security at attending EFF events. And that was quite unfortunate, you know, and in there was a threat almost to say to a journalist, a reporter who works on their titles, listen, if you come here again, we can't promise your safety.
People have gone further to say you're inciting violence.
But Vuyo, when I am here, I'm your guest, okay? I'm your guest, and when I entered there's a board that says the rights of admission reserved. You are warning me that if I sleep here, you can't be held accountable. When we invite journalists, we make sure we treat them well. They are our guests. You understand? We're communicating to them that you are banned, not because you are journalists, but because you come in the name of the New Age. That's what they're doing. They come in the name of the New Age. They are representing the New Age. They're not representing their views. They are paid. They are told, go and cover an EFF event. They don't do it out of the goodness of their hearts. But you are here because you belong to an association. You're not sent by Media 24. You belong to an association of people who are protecting media freedom. In fact, the EFF's position today to go against ANN7 and the New Age is actually the only protection of media freedom against the people who masquerade as media people, yet running communications department for propaganda against illegitimate activities in the country.
I'm paid by the SABC, that's why I'm here, not out of the goodness in me.
Yeah, so the day the SABC becomes a company of the ANC and it runs ANC propaganda, you will not be shocked that we will take a position that we can't trust you. You're not media. You are a it's like Zizi Kodwa covering us. That's what those journalists are doing. They work for the ANC. They work for... He's not a journalist. He comes in the name of the ANC to cover the ANC. That's what we're dealing with here. But if they come as journalists...
Does the EFF really want to be a party that bans journalists from your press conference? I mean, really, I mean, what would you say if a party like the ANC does the same?
You
to
can
another
come.
media house?
I'm saying what is banned
whatever reason.
Is not journalist what is banned. What is banned is anybody that comes in the name of the New Age and in the name of ANN7. In our view, those two things are not media.
But what will you do to them if they come to your press conference?
We'll ask them to leave. They are not welcome. Just like, you know, in any house, if it's your house, you say, please, you're not welcome, please go because you represent this particular media house. You come in its name.
I really don't think that you can say you support media freedom
and that, by the way,
you will turn away journalists from your door just because they're doing
We're not turning them as journalists. We're turning them as representatives who are coming in the name. They're doing work for the New Age. Their decisions are going to be deciphered. They're going to go to the editorial decisions, all of which are manipulated in any way. These are not independent media houses that are engaged in the space of truth-seeking, of building an accountable society and all those things. These are communication departments of a corrupt family that is bringing our country into disrepute, abusing the generosity of the people of South Africa, and they must go.
But where are you going to stop? It's going to be the ANN7 and the New Age.
Oh, it's just the ANN7.
But what about... And tomorrow is going to be someone else. Someone else, you're going to be unhappy with something that I will have said or will have written.
No, there are people who say a lot of bad things about us. We don't ban them. There are people who have criticized. In fact, the EFF is the subject of the worst forms of criticism, both from liberal media, right-wing media. We engage with everyone. We're taking an approach. This is political. We're a political organization. We're opening a debate. We're saying, what are your moral obligations when you know the activities of the Gupta-owned TNA and ANN? What have you done? What have you ever said? If you are protecting media freedom, knowing the things that they are engaged in, what has the ANC ever done? What have you done? What has the government ever done? They landed in Waterkloof. Were there consequences? No. We're taking a position. That's why we are here tonight, engaging. And I'm saying to you, we're going to fight to the bitter end until the Guptas go back wherever they came from.
Eden, do you think you and I should engage with these guys, sit them down and say this is where you think you're wrong?
I think so, and that's what we will do, because we really believe strongly that if you defend media freedom, if you say that there should be a diversity of media and a diversity of voices in this country, you should even entertain journalists paid by the Gupta family. You should even entertain journalists paid by Naspers. You should entertain journalists paid by the SABC. Whenever you differ with them, put forward your voice, put your views there, why you differ from them. You're asking what have we done. The media has reported a lot on the Gupta family and the Pings. This is not about that. This is not about exposing the Gupta family's advertising from government. This is not about Waterkloof, which the media exposed. This is about banning journalists who legitimately applied for jobs, who's working for a certain media company, who's really trying to do their work, from gatherings. And we will sit down with them, of course we will, and we will try and persuade the EFF that in the spirit of media freedom, in the spirit of what they as a party have come to stand for, this is not how we
the starting point,
open to persuasion?
No, of course. The starting point is for us to agree, and he's not doing that. The starting point is our definition. The premise is we do not define ANN7 and the new age as media house. It's like government communications coming to cover our press conferences, and you think you are
but you media. Ban them. It will be okay.
But in this case, we've chosen a political campaign to antagonize the activities of a corrupt family, and these activities run down in ANN7 as well as in TNA. And again, I'm saying to you, separate the two. This is not a ban of individual. It's not even a ban of journalism. We're taking a moral position. They are not. They are starting to speak today about this issue. They are not. And this is the attitude of South Africans. This is what South Africans do. Reactive. And in the reactive, they choose to stay on the sky. The concrete reality of antagonism, so that we change our society into better, they don't engage in. So I'm shocked. I'm shocked. Is ANN7 and the New Age qualify? Are they legitimate media houses in the view of the South African Editors Forum? If so, then I know that we're in real trouble.
Look, I mean, it's been, I mean, how the media has worked. I mean, people come from, separate, different vantage points. There are people who are pro this or pro that, anti this and anti that. They come from, there are people you would classify as progressive media and conservative media, people who don't want to even see something like the EFF and what it stands for. But you do not, kick those people out simply because, they come from whatever vantage point. So why are you doing it with these ones?
It's not their views. Again, I have to emphasize. We're not banning ANN7 and TNA because of their views and their stories. We're banning them because they are Gupta media. No, ideas, I mean, we engage ideas all the time. We're critical all the time. We get beaten in parliament for speaking, for ideas. But we've taken a position here that there is this family that is taking advantage of our country. There are no consequences to them. This is one of the first actions that we have taken to antagonize the Gupta family in an unnegotiable demand that they must leave South Africa. They must disengage in our economy, in our politics, and leave our country. That is what we are saying.
The last word, Adrian?
I still think it's unfortunate. I think that I don't agree with Bwiseni that it's not media houses. I don't know what he means by legitimate. Maybe he also thinks Naspers is not a legitimate media house. I think it's a media house. It's a newspaper that gets distributed. All those other issues about the advertising, the circulation, sure, they are there. We write about them, we investigate it. But it's a newspaper where a lot of people I know work on. It's a TV station where people we know work on. And I think to punish those journalists to not be able to do their job is very wrong. It's not in the spirit of the Constitution. It's not in the spirit of media freedom.
If they come work for you, they are welcome in EFF events. It's because they come in the name of TNA and ANN7. So what's going to happen is that they're going to go back. You see what's going to happen is that they're going to go back and say EFF is an important political party that must be engaged and we can't cover their... They're going to go and there'll be a genuine dialogue now with their bosses.
It's never been
and the next thing we know, ANN7 and TNA are removed from Gupta ownership. And the Guptas leave the country.
It's never been a secret that the Gupta family owns those titles. I don't know why the EFF is now discovered. It's been there for many years. The launch of the title.
We've only been 2 years.
The launch was attended by the son of the president. It's always been.
For the past 2 years,
quite transparent. It's not like the Citizen in the.
For the past 2 years, we've never been to ANN7 studios. We've never taken special interviews. We've never done any interview since the existence of the EFF. That has been a policy. People who have gone there have been internally reprimanded. Talk to all the journalists, talk to all the producers, they will tell you. EFF has always never come to us. So we are escalating an action that has always been there. And it has always been public. We've even denied, rejected invitations to the TNA business breakfast with Morning Live, on the basis that it's a Gupta-owned platform. It's a platform where the Guptas are involved. So it's not a first act. Since the EFF has been around, it has been antagonizing Gupta Communications Department, TNA and ANN7. And the debate has begun. Where is it going? The Guptas must leave South Africa with immediate effect.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Will.
Well, that's where we're going to leave it. It's all we had time for on tonight's episode of On the Record. Till next week, it's a good night for me.